Hello, good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, everybody. This presentation I'm making is actually in conjunction with SilvaWell Limited. I hope everybody can hear me clearly. All right, thank you very much. Okay, my name is Dr. Solomon, and I am with the Nigerian Institute for Oil Palm Research, NIFOR, and I'm based in the headquarters here in Benin. I am the head of Economics and Extension Department, NIFOR. Okay. You are all welcome to this presentation on oil palm plantation that is being presented in conjunction with SilvaWell Limited. Okay, so I will just start by giving a brief information about the opportunities available in oil palm value chain. As of oil seed in the whole world, the oil palm is the most productive in terms of oil production compared to all other oil seeds like the soybean, like the groundnut, cotton seed and all that. It produces the highest quantity of oil per plant, highest in the whole world. Okay, and in those glorious days of oil palm cultivation in the past, the business on oil palm provides about 90% of the workforce engaged in agriculture, especially in the south-south zone. Okay, and then if you have an oil palm plantation that is properly managed, properly processed, you can get between 3 to 3.5 tons of palm oil and palm kernel oil from 1 hectare. As of today, a ton of palm oil goes for about 2 million naira. So you can imagine in a situation where you have multiples of hectareage. Can you imagine what kind of money you can generate from such business? Okay, and then the activities along the value chain creates a lot of opportunity for engagement in terms of labor force and including export potentials. Okay, some of the activities or the value chain level of oil palm production includes one. The first one is seed production, and that is beyond the capacity of ordinary people, because for you to go into seed production, you need to be involved in heavy research. For you to produce one quality seed takes a minimum of 25 years, which means it's not easy for anybody to just go into seed production easily, just like we have a lot of all these people claiming that they produce seeds. But that is not, I'll get back to that. So, but that aspect is primarily the responsibility of research institutes like NIFOR, or big estate or seed production agencies like those ones you have outside Nigeria that have the capacity to do that. All right, but as of Nigerian Institute for Oil Palm Research is the only one that has the capacity because it is being funded by government. And like I told you, it takes a minimum of 25 years to get one good quality planting material. So, but that's an area that people don't get engaged in easily. Then the next line of the value chain is the oil palm nursery business. Then I will go into details later. Then another aspect of the value chain is having the skill for oil palm field establishment and management. If you have the skill, that skill you can sell. When I say sell, when people acquire planting material, they look for people to help them to do the planting. Okay? And for that activity, you get paid handsomely for that kind of activity if you have the competence. And again, another aspect is this management of plantations. As of today, there's a shortage of skill in that particular aspect. You will be surprised that businesses or big estates, they go outside Nigeria to look for skills, personnel for that area, when we have quite a number of young and vibrant youths who can take up this responsibility. If you go to places like big time Okomu, you will realize that most of their farm managers are from like South Africa or Ghana. Okay, not because of anything, but because that skill is a skill you have to acquire to be able to do that job. But we don't have that. We have a shortage of that. So it's an area as a young person you can go into, and I can tell you that's very profitable. That for that skill, people get very well paid. Okay? I know somebody who just got employment with one estate, and they were begging him to take 850,000 naira per month. Begging him, not that because he has the skill and they know the quality, and because he has worked in big estates and they know his quality. He was asking for 1.5. They were begging him to take 850,000 naira per month. So it's a very quality area where you can engage in, learn the skill, and you can sell that skill easily. So apart from oil palm plantation establishment and management, we have oil palm processing venture. All right, that one can be divided into two major areas: processing in the terms of producing the processing equipment, or the actual exercise of engaging in the production of palm oil. I hope you get it very clear. One, producing the equipment, that is, you have the skill as an engineer to produce processing equipment for processing palm oil, palm kernel oil. And the other one is having the skill to operate these machines on a daily basis for palm oil production. So we have the palm kernel recovery business. We have palm wine bottling, both in retail and plastic containers. And you have palm wine packaging in bulk plastic containers. You see, all these areas that I've just mentioned, for young entrepreneurs, agripreneurs, the NIFOR has the capacity to train people, to train the young ones in the acquisition of most skills that are required for each of these value chain that I've mentioned. There's a picture I have pasted now on your screen. This was in those days when people paid very, very valuable attention to agriculture. And as at that time, oil palm was so important that if you look at, this is Nigerian money as at that time, this is £1 Nigerian money as at that time. I'm talking about the 70s, the late 60s. You will see that there's a picture of somebody trying to work on a palm bunch. That shows you how important the crop was to the country as at that time, that it has to be reflected in our currency. That is why I decided to bring out this, for you to understand how prolific the business in oil palm production can be in establishment of oil palm plantation. So again, if you look at Nigeria generally, there are some states that are very suitable for oil palm cultivation. If you can see what the picture again, or the table I have before you, I have areas that are highly suitable, and I have areas that are marginal in terms of suitability for oil palm cultivation. And if you look at it, we are in Edo State. Edo State is one of those major, highly suitable areas for oil palm cultivation. If you look at it, it is not in any particular order. Not that Abia is better than Akwa Ibom. It's just bringing out the states. And you can see that all the states of the South are very, very, very suitable for oil palm cultivation. Okay? So I need to bring out this for you to know that you are in a gold mine when we talk about oil palm business. So what are the factors that are very important for the cultivation of oil palm? Sorry, as I'm talking, if you have questions along the line, I give you the permission to come in between and ask questions so that I can explain as we are going. All right? So, like I said, what are the conditions? What are the favorable conditions for oil palm cultivation? The first one is suitable rainfall of nothing less than 1,500 millimeters per annum. Nothing less than that. If you have rainfall of this status, you are good to go. Then another thing that is favorable for oil palm cultivation, especially along the south-south zone, is the length of the rainy season. In some cases, it can go even up to 8 months. Then relative short dry season, then very good soils. And then if you look at, again, the south-south zone, we have a vast natural groups of this crop, which shows that south-south zone is the center of origin and home of the oil palm, because of the vast variability we have of the materials we have. That's how you can determine the origin of a particular entity. All right. So the south-south zone has a very high variety of natural and semi-natural groups. Apart from that, there's a long history of engagement of the crop in the south-south zone, which means when you engage in a crop for quite a long time, there's a possibility that you know so much about the crop. So all these things are embedded. We have it very much within the south-south zone for where we are now. okay? Apart from the fact that the people are very familiar with the crop. So before I go further, I will first of all talk about NIFOR. And I need to talk about NIFOR because NIFOR is the only major authentic source of oil palm planting in Nigeria. When I say only authentic, I'm not saying there are people import. When I say people import, some people import planting materials, okay? But those people who import the planting materials have the wherewithal. And these are the big estates. Because I will still come back to explain that later. But as far as this country is concerned, the only authentic source where it is produced in this country is this NIFOR, nobody else. Anybody that claims that produces, they know that they are just scam. Okay? So our major responsibility, the number one responsibility we have is to do breeding and selection for best planting materials for Nigerian farmers. All right? And after identifying and producing these improved materials, we go into the multiplication for distribution into Nigerian estates and for oil palm plantation establishment. But NIFOR has a number of mandate crops. We have 5 mandate crops. The first one is the oil palm, that we are deliberating on today. The second one is the coconut palm. The third one is the date palm. Some of you might not be familiar with date palm, but if you have seen some of these Hausa people, there's this fruit that is so sugary, they put in wheelbarrows, roll around to sell, usually dry. That is date palm. But it thrives very well in the northern part. That one has a very high sugar content. And that is why during fasting or after fasting, you see that it's one of the fruits because it has, the sugar content is good and it's easily absorbed by the body. So during fasting, it's always one of the major fruits that people consume. And apart from that, for the northern area, it has some kind of historical or religious inclination because the fruit is believed to have come from this Asian area. When I say Southeast or South Asian area, from Saudi Arabia, and all that. So because of that, it has some religious colonization for the northern people. Apart from date, we have raffia palm. The major product from raffia palm is the palm wine. And for that palm wine, NIFOR here have developed various methods of bottling, both in plastics, just like you have plastic Coca-Cola and in bottles. And when they are produced in that way and preserved in that way, they can be like that, maintaining its status and quality for 12 months without changing quality. Okay, that technology is there. We train people on that. Okay, if anybody is interested. Then the last mandate crop we have is the shea tree. The shea tree is the source of shea butter. And for each of these crops, we have substations located in areas best suited for each of these crops. For example, I'll give you an example. For coconut, for example, the highest concentration of coconut in Nigeria is around Badagry in Lagos State. So because of that, we have a substation there located to do most of our work on coconut research, for breeding work, for agronomic work, for crop protection work and all that, okay? For the oil palm, we have a station in Abak in Akwa Ibom State, okay, because that's part of the heart of oil palm production in Nigeria. For the date palm that I just mentioned, we have a station in Jigawa State, Dutse, okay? For raffia palm, we have a station, our substation in Onuebum. Onuebum is in Bayelsa State. You will all agree with me that Bayelsa is practically underwater. Okay, that's why we have our station in Bayelsa State for our research activity on raffia. And then for the shea tree, we have a station in Bida. Bida is located in Niger State. Okay, so all these inform a lot of work we do in terms of our mandate crops. So coming back to our crop of attention, which is the oil palm. There are 2 major varieties of the oil palm. 2 major varieties. The first one is the Dura variety, and the Dura variety has its own properties. What are the properties? It has very thick shell. The shell is what you have, the thick shell you have around the kernel in the middle of the fruit. Then the outer layer where it is red, where you are supposed to have your palm oil, is called the mesocarp. The mesocarp is thin, all right, which shows that if you have big fruits, the quantity of palm oil you get from it will be low, because that thin area. Because if you are looking at the diagram that I have, it's just there. The red area is where you have when you press for your oil, that's where you get it from. Because it is very tiny, you don't get much oil. Okay, and then the shell is so thick that to break it, you need to use stone to break it. While the kernel, the white one inside, is relatively big. Okay, so that is the attributes of the Dura variety. The major thing is that thick shell, which occupies most of the space in the fruit. Then the second variety is what we call the Pisifera, Pisifera. The Pisifera in itself, that one doesn't have shell at all. There's no shell. Where you have a mesocarp, where you have a palm oil, is very wide, very big. So which means you can get more oil. The kernel, there's little or no kernel. All right, but it has its own problem. What is the problem with the Pisifera? The Pisifera, in terms of fruiting, it is more female sterile, which means at times when you plant it, it might be fruiting maybe once in 3 years, once in 7 years. You understand? And the number of fruits it carries is not usually much. But the quality of palm oil that comes from it is very good. Are you getting it? So that attribute is what we are interested in. From these two major varieties all over the world, these are the two major varieties that are being used for breeding purpose. From these two varieties, we now do a crossing. When we cross the two, we use the Dura as a mother palm, and we get pollen from Pisifera. After studying them, it takes a long time. You have to study the Dura to ensure that what you are looking for is there. Other attributes are also embedded, like height, like resistance to diseases and all that. All those things are incorporated into the Dura. Then you pick the pollen from the Pisifera, you use it to pollinate the Dura. And then when you do that, you now have what we call the Tenera hybrid materials. These hybrid materials are not stable material. Because when I say not stable, if we give you this material and you see the tree is doing very well, and you go to that tree and pick the seed from it and grow it, it will not give you the same thing that we are doing. That's why I said it's not a stable material. It's a hybrid. If you go back and plant it, it will segregate and go back to the parent stock. But when I say go back to Pisifera and Dura. And these days, when you are talking about oil palm business, oil palm cultivation, it's a very serious business. It is capital intensive. So if you get it wrong from that seed level, you can be sure that you have already failed before starting. So I'm taking time to explain this so that you will understand if you are going into oil palm cultivation, what you put on ground will determine the outcome, the profitability from your investment. If you have a diagram there again, if you look at it, Pisifera and Dura, they are there, you cross the thing, you get what I have there, which is the Tenera hybrid materials. What are the attributes of the Tenera hybrid materials? If you look at the fruit, I have pots in transverse section. You will see the area that contains the oil, which is the mesocarp. You can see that it's very fat. The shell that is very thick becomes thinner. In some cases, you can even crack it with your teeth. Then you have the kernel. The kernel is sizable too. Apart from this, they are relatively very, very resistant to most of the major diseases of the crop. Okay? And then in a situation when you plant Dura, when you are getting about 3.5 tons of fruits in 1 year from 1 hectare, if you plant Tenera, you can get up to about 25-30 tons of fruits from the same portion of land, from the same 1 hectare. Okay, so as a businessman, that's why I'm trying to explain this. As a businessman, you have to be very wary and very concerned about the materials you plant on ground. I'm taking my time to explain all this so that I know we have a lot of young ones on the platform. You may wish to go into all this so that you don't get misguided If you go on the internet these days, you see all sorts of things. People claiming to be able to do all sorts of things. It's because of the country. People, in fact, you see some of them with corporate representations and all that they are producing this, they are producing that, or they are importing materials. All those things are not true. I'll get to the issue of adulteration later. So that is the two major variety and the hybrid tenera that we all go out to plant. Okay, it has thinner shell, then there are fibers, but I've just explained all that. So there's another picture I have here where you see how the artificial pollination is done. You are here in NIFOR. Maybe when you were coming, you will have noticed some palms that were like, say, the leaves were facing down. Yes. And if you look further, you see some of them were carrying white bags.
Yes.
Those are breeding materials. Those are materials we use for our breeding work. Bringing the leaves down is like having access to the fruit itself, because if you don't bring them down, you can't have access to do your artificial pollination. That's why you see it facing down. So those are the materials we use for such purpose. I have some pictures here that I have. So the next picture I have here is some very good high quality tenera hybrid fruits cut into transverse section. Apart from the fact that it has higher mesocarp that contains the oil, the fruit setting, when I say fruit setting, the number of bunches on each palms are a lot higher. If you in Dura, maybe when you are having about 6, 7, 8, in tenera you can have up to 22 fruit sets. Okay, all these things are the things that are responsible for the differences in yield. Like I said, these tenera hybrid materials are given out by NIFOR, and it is regarded as, we call it extension work seeds. They start fruiting 2.5 to 3 years after field planting. Then it has the potentials of giving up to 25 to 30 tons of fresh fruit bunches, attainable at about 8 years after planting. Then with proper processing activities, you can get between 3 and 3.5 tons of palm oil from 1 hectare in 1 year. They are relatively resistant to major diseases of the crop. And above all, they are very well adapted to our natural environment. That is the major thing. In Nigeria, you have, let's say, 2 or 3 distinct weather periods. You have the wet season, rainy season, you have the dry season, and then you have what we call harmattan. So everything you need to do in terms of agriculture in Nigeria here, because we depend on natural rainfall, we have to do it during the rainy season as it concerns the oil palm. And finally, like I said, NIFOR is the only authentic source of this material in Nigeria. And like I said, some people do import. And who are the people who import? People who have the capacity. People like Presco, people like Okomu. These are big estates, very big estates, the biggest estates in Nigeria. So they have foreign partners, so they can bring in materials from Malaysia, from Indonesia, from anywhere. This now will take us to this issue of adulteration, planting materials from outside. In fact, these days, people talk about super gene. The super gene saga is calm. There is super gene. Yes, there is super gene. But super gene is just a brand name. It's just like you have Total, you have Oando, you have NNPC. Everybody is selling the same fuel. But if you go, some people say, go to NNPC. You understand? What I'm trying to explain is that super gene is a tenera hybrid material produced in Malaysia by a company that named that material super gene. Yes, the materials are very good. But if you bring that same material to Nigeria, it will not perform the way they perform in Malaysia. Why? Because in Malaysia, their weather throughout the year, they have a spread of rainfall and sunshine almost evenly distributed throughout the year. And that is a perfect climate requirement for the oil palm. Unlike us that have distinct rainfall, distinct dry season. During dry season, you don't have much fruits. Because of that harsh weather, you have more male inflorescence on the palms because of that harsh weather. But they don't have that. So throughout the year, the palms are breeding. So there's something like Super Gene. And apart from that, if you want to bring Super Gene, one Super Gene seed from Malaysia costs between $2.5 to $3 to buy one seed. I'm not talking about the bag of 500. So if you buy one seed for $2, for example, you want to buy 500 seeds, multiply that by $2. That will be about $1,000. If you convert $1,000 to Naira, you will know what that one will give you. That is already 1 point something million for the seed alone. Then when you now bring the seed here, you will still have to raise them in the nursery to say, okay, you want to sell them as seedlings to people. If you are going to sell that kind of seedling, there's no how you can sell it for less than 10, 15,000 for one. Then somebody will come and tell you, say, I have Super Gene. Oh, if you want to buy Super Gene, bring 3,000 Naira. That alone, first of all, will tell you that this is a scam. Or somebody will tell you, say, okay, if you buy my seedlings, I will give you citrus, or I will give you rice. What has rice got to do with you planting other materials? So there's a lot of scam because of that name, Super Gene. So people, when you hear that, it's very fascinating. The people who gave that name too, they know the implication. So it's just like you having your product, Cola, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, everything is cola. Are you getting what I'm trying to explain? So it is the same thing, okay? But people use the ignorance that people have to scam people. Tell them, come, I have this. And when you go on the internet, you see all sorts of things, all sorts. And like I said earlier, the only authentic source of improved planting material in Nigeria is this place. And NIFOR has been in existence for about 86 years, doing this same work since 1939. Like I said, there are some estates that can bring it. In fact, I told somebody, I said, you have Presco, you have Okomun, who declare in billions half yearly profits. Why not ask them, why are they not planting Super Gene? They don't plant Super Gene. They don't even have anything Super Gene in their this thing. If that Super Gene is really super, the way they are doing, all those companies will not leave them because these are businessmen. They want the best out of their investment. There's a lot of adulteration out there. And anytime we have opportunity, we always try to hammer on this, that look, if you want to procure oil palm seedlings as far as this country is concerned, in fact, before we used to use some government agencies, some individuals to get involved in reaching out to farmers. But because of this scam these days, we don't use any agent. If you want to reach us, we have our email address, we have our website. Our website is nifor.org.ng. That's our website. NIFOR, all in small letters, nifor.org.ng. While if you want to reach us, it's info@nifor.org. If you want to get in touch with us, any message, information, info@nifor.org. You can always reach us. So that is why we have to stop. And apart from that, if you go on our website, there are phone numbers you can use to reach us. I think that should be enough about all this issue of adulteration. But I want you to know that it's a very serious problem. I have seen in Ghana, people have committed suicide because they bought the wrong materials after spending so much to establish plantations. In Nigeria, there was somebody last year who was based in America, gave somebody money to establish an oil palm plantation for him. The man established about 240 hectares. After about 11 years, the man started complaining that what they told him that by social time he's supposed to be getting something. He wasn't getting it. Based on that, the man came. And he came to me, told us he doesn't know what is happening. That his farm, what he's expecting, wasn't getting it. So when we got there, and we did a survey of what he has, we did an evaluation of what he has for the farm. And we gave him evidence that, look, what you have on your farm are adulterated materials. And the guy he felt so bad, he asked us, what is the remedy? And we told him the only remedy is to cut them down and replant after 11 years of very serious investment. We told him, if you can manage what you have, you can go ahead and manage. But the only remedy is for you to cut all those things down and plant the genuine material. You know what that means? It took the man about 2 or 3 months. He came back, he said, okay, fine. I will start replanting, but on a gradual basis, which he has started. He has planted over 70%, he replanted over 70% of the land now. But you can imagine the amount of money he has wasted. Oil palm business, like I said, is very expensive. You want to go into oil palm plantation, you need land. Land is not cheap. If you get the land, you need to clear the land to prepare it for planting. Depending on the size, you may need to bring equipment and machines. It's not cheap. Even if you are going to use human beings, it's not cheap. After that, then if the place is cleared, you need to acquire the planting material. It's not cheap. In NIFOR today, as of today, our seedlings go for 2,500 naira for one. So if you need 150 for just 1 hectare, multiply it by 2005, then multiply it by the number of hectares you have. So it's not cheap to acquire the planting material. Then after that, you need expertise to do the planting properly, which I was talked about, the training that your people can acquire. For that, somebody has to pay. Then after establishing, you will have to wait for 2.5 to 3 years before you can start getting something out of it. While waiting, you have to control weeds or you plant intercrop. While waiting, you have to apply fertilizer. While waiting, you have to look out and control pests and diseases. All these things are very serious investment, but it's a very serious investment. But if it is properly done, the sky can be the limit. Okay, I just told you that a ton of oil goes for about 2 million. If you have 1 hectare, from 1 hectare, if you do it properly, you can earn between 6 and 7 million annually from 1 hectare. Then if you multiply it by total, you understand what I mean? So, but you have to do it right. So it's not a cheap business. It's not a business you go into and say you want to experiment. It's not a business you want to go to and say, okay, you want to cut corners. So if you know you want to go into oil palm cultivation, you have to take it as a very serious business for what it is as of today. Because of this adulteration, you can see the way we package our fruits, our seeds these days. You know, before we just put them in nylon bags, but when we saw what people were doing, we have now started packaging them in cartons with batch number, date of delivery, and all that, which means there is now traceability. We can trace it back to which batch, to anything, if there's anything anywhere. You understand? So that's what this picture here shows. So let's now go to the second venture in oil palm value chain, which is the oil palm establishment and management of oil palm nurseries. The first thing we have to talk about is that why at all do we have to keep an oil palm nursery? Anyway, so far from what I've been presented, does anybody have questions? Anything that is not clear that we can explain to you? Victory, you are there. I'm looking at you. Do you have questions for us? Okay, if you don't have questions, then I go on. Can I go on? Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. The first thing is that when you want to go into an oil palm nursery business, first of all, why must you go into oil palm nursery business? Why not just collect the seed and go straight and plant it in your farm and allow it to start growing? Why? Now, the first thing is that if you have an oil palm nursery, it helps you to grow vigorous and very healthy seedlings that are going to be easy for you to transplant into your field. All right? It helps you to have very vigorous and healthy seedlings. That's the first reason. The second reason is that if you plant your seed directly into the field, you are likely going to lose, if not everything, at least 50% of what you are planting. Okay? Which means if you plant directly into the field, you could have very high losses. When they are young, they are very delicate because we give them out as sprouted seeds. You'll see the radicle, you see the plume clearly. So if you plant them like that, they are very delicate. If you don't know how to handle them at that level, you will lose quite a number of them. Then another thing is that for the first 4 weeks, those seeds require very special attention and care for them to survive and sustain themselves when they get to the field. Then apart from that, when you have a nursery, it is easy for you to manage a large number of these seeds. Instead of spreading them out, if you have them together, it's easier for you to manage them in terms of watering, in terms of maintenance generally, and in terms of quite a number of things, so that they survive. Okay, and apart from that, somebody will tell you that like that is even cheaper for you to maintain them at that younger stage and more beneficial than for you to plant them straight into the field. When you want to establish a nursery, the first thing you need to do is you need to pick a site to establish your nursery. And in picking a site, you have to look for a place that is if it is possible, a place close to where you have the land you want to plant it, in order to reduce other costs that you may encounter during planting, especially transportation. That is number one. Number two, you need a land that is relatively flat, not a land that is slopey. Because if it is slopey, when you plant, most of those seedlings will be falling. A place that is not waterlogged, okay, especially during rainy season or when you are irrigating. Again, then this site must be well protected against rodents, because young palms, young leaves, young palms are very delicious meal for rodents. Once they eat up the growing point, that palm is gone. So you need to make sure from rodents, from wild animals, from cattle, from herdsmen, and all that. You need a place that is safe where you can run your nursery. And then there are certain materials you need if you want to establish your nursery. One major thing you need if you want to establish your nursery is that there must be a good source of water. You understand? Water in the sense that you must irrigate. You must irrigate, especially during the dry season. So water is essential. If you don't irrigate them during rainy season or let them have access to good watering, you can equally lose a very high number of that. Apart from that, you need the sprouted seeds. You need poly bags. You know what poly bags are? The black polythene bags. You put soil to plant them. All right. You need top humus soil. You need decomposed bunch refuse that we use for mulching. Okay. Then you need some fertilizers and probably some agrochemicals. In oil palm cultivation, there are practically two types of oil palm nurseries. We have what we call the single stage nursery and the double stage nursery. For the single stage nursery, you have your seeds. If you look at, I have a diagram, I have some pictures again on the screen. You have the seeds. Then the bags, the poly bags, are usually of two types. There's a big bag, and then there's usually the small bags. The small bags are used for the pre-nursery. The big bags are used for the standard nursery. Okay, but for the single stage nursery, you get the big bags, which is about 400 by 300 centimeters. Okay, you fill it with topsoil. You will arrange them out properly in the nursery. Maybe when you finish, you could visit our nursery before you go. I have a picture of what our nursery looks like. If you get to our nursery now, it's almost exactly with what we are seeing now on the screen. You arrange them out, then you plant your seed. Your seed has two sides. There is the one that looks a little bit greenish, going up like this. That one is we call that one the plumule. The plumule goes up to become the shoot, the tree. And then there's another one that is brighter and it has something like hairs on it. That is the radicle. That's the one that grows to become the root. So when you want to plant it, you ensure, when you put your hole in the middle, you ensure that one that's supposed to be the root faces the ground and the one that's supposed to be the tree faces up. If you see what I have there, you will see clearly. The bags are arranged, you just plant them, and at the end of the day, this is what you have. This is another example of the seeds. Sprouted oil seeds are planted directly into nursery bags that have been properly spaced out and left in the nursery until they are ready for transplanting into the field. For this type of single stage nursery, you will leave them there for the next 10 to 12 months before you take them to your field. That is for the single stage nursery. Then for the double stage nursery, you need two types of bags. You need the small poly bags, which is about 25 centimeters by 12.5 centimeter. Lay flat. When I say lay flat, if you lay flat like this, you take the measurement. Okay, this is the measurement. Those are the pre-nursery bags. For those ones, you will fill these bags and stack them together. Stack them you will see them in the nursery. Stack them together. Then you plant the same way I just described it to you. But then you will now manage this one like that for about 3 months. After 3 months, you fill the bigger bags, just like I said, and space them out properly. Then you transplant from these smaller bags into these bigger ones. Each of them have their advantages. Each of them have their disadvantages. Okay? The double stage nursery, if you are doing very large estate, nursery, like say you want to have 100,000 and co, it is better for you to do the double stage nursery. Why? Because if you do the double stage nursery, we'll be able to choose those ones of equal vigor at a particular time and put them together. So at the end of the day, you have palms of equal vigor at maturity after about 10 to 12 months. Okay? And then it is easier for you to see those ones that are not doing well and find a way to improve on them to do very well before transplanting them. So the level of losses at that level is usually less. I have a diagram here showing the double stage nursery too. One, you are not seeing it. I wish you can be seeing it. The ones you see these small bags stacked together, all right, planted. After 3 months, we now move them to the bigger bags, just like I have them in the diagram. And like I said, your choice of nursery system depends on a number of things. One, the scale of the nursery, which I was telling you, if you are doing like 10,000, 20,000, you can manage single. But when you are going to 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, we are advised that you follow the double stage nursery. And then again, another very important thing is the skill that is required to manage the nursery. It's very important. Those are the things that determines the choice of the nursery systems you are adopting. So after establishing your nursery, what are the things you do? There are management systems you need to carry out. You need to water. Okay, there are different watering systems. You can use watering cans. You can use all sorts of irrigation facility like the Sansui irrigation system and all that. The second maintenance activities you carry out is weeding. Weeding can be done manually or with the use of chemicals, But these days, because of climate-related issues, we try to discourage the use of the overusage of chemicals. But mulching, you can reduce weed by mulching the bags or even mulching the floors so as to reduce weed. There's various cultural methods you can use without using chemicals. But in extreme cases, you may need to use chemicals. So I have pictures showing mulching both within the bag and on the field. The pictures are there. And then another activity you need to carry out in the nursery is the issue of fertilizer application. You will need to apply fertilizer. There are various recommendations in the presentation so that we can move fast. And then you equally have to control pests and diseases. A major pest in the nursery are termites. Termites, they burrow through the soil, enter the bags through the roots, eat up the root. Before you know what is happening, you see the palms will be withering in the nursery and it's gone. But if you do proper watering, this can be reduced. If you water properly, it can be reduced. Okay, and in extreme cases too, you will have to look for termitariums that are within the vicinity. Termitariums are all these termites mound. You have to look for them, go into the thing, pick out the queen, destroy the queen. By so doing, termites will just